have to talk about screenscaping. So in the exercise you had to deliver today, you had your fair share of moments probably where you were thinking, what the hell I'm doing here? That is on purpose. That is one of the fun part we have in network automation. It's also one of the horrible part. That's probably why I have no hairs. That's probably why I have a lot of caffeine consumption. And one of the topics that is also in this direction is screenscaping. So if you had to find out what is configured or not with the technologies you have learned so far, you maybe have done some simple screenscaping already, or configuration parsing. I would not compare them, but they are in the same. If we are talking about text parsing, they are both not really the nice way what to do. So we as a network automation engineer, what we would love is always structured data, right? Structured data that we can access with a programmatical way. What is the reality? Many things we still have to use show commands on our network device, and then this output is definitely not designed for machine processing. This is designed for human readability. So for me, what is screenscaping, or the picture I saw once and I immediately had to think about screenscaping, was this one. So it is just, how can I say that? It's just a hack. It's just working around because we don't have the proper APIs, because we don't have the proper interfaces to talk with our device. Screenscaping, sometimes we also have to do it in on Linux, for example. There are some commands we don't have JSON output, for example, and then we have to use tools to get the information we need. And the issue is, it is extremely unstable. If there is any change in the output, it can affect the whole pipeline, the whole product we are building. So we have to always think or keep in our mind that there is a possibility that this output could change. So one of the issues is, of course, if there is a vendor update and the show command will change, he will not put this in a release note, because for him this is just some cosmetic. Why bothering mention that now some output is different? But if we rely on this output and we are screenscaping this, we have to be aware that this could be changed. I have seen changes like one space more. For us, we don't see a difference, but if depending how we made, for example, the regex, there is a difference. Another fun part are, for example, timestamps. If we are testing something, most of the time probably we have 2 digits, colon, 2 digits, colon, 2 digits, colon, right? If we, for example, have PHP peerings, and this is up for a couple months, years, there will be a change of how this is presented. If we would not consider this and just test in the lab, we will not, hopefully, develop and test for over a year until we realize that the data format changes. So all this stuff, if we do screenscaping, we need to have in mind. I was looking this morning through some pull requests in Napalm, because Napalm does a lot of screenscaping for us. That's one of the reasons why we have Napalm. And I found the pull request, and it is a nice example that this definitely can happen. Here the vendor decided to, in the newer releases, to change some stuff. So for example, this new was, or in this pull request, this line here is actually the change. So before we had 2 different formats who could be with kilo, with kilo or without, and we had used, we have free, and now we have on the newer versions, we have with mega, and the free and the used is switched. So we have now a float and not an integer. For us as a human readable person, looking at this, the output looks totally fine, right? If we have a simple regex, the regex is coming here afterwards, but it's just regex. This is something we have to consider, and we have to check, or we need to have the regex or the solution in this way that we can handle this. This is a simple example, but still we need to have this. So for each new update we are doing, we need to test our automation first. So if we have an automated network and someone is upgrading some boxes, these boxes with this version have to be first tested with our solution. Not only if we do screenscaping, but yeah, if we are using legacy technology with CLI, with Ansible, with Nonlinear, there is a high chance that there is screenscaping somewhere involved. Especially if we want to get data out of it, there must be some screenscaping. Sometimes we're doing it by ourselves, sometimes we rely on the community that hopefully someone else hit the bug first. So on Napalm, because many people are using this, there is a high chance that many will face this issue, but the first one who hits it does normally open an issue. Hopefully he has the resources also and the time to make a pull request. Then it will be in the next release, and the next person will not even notice that there was a change. But many times we are the ones who hit the bug first. So in this lecture today, it's all about screenscaping. It's nothing complicated, it's just annoying. So we have a couple of tools that can help us. So we have TextFSM, TTP, and Genie as the three main libraries, I would say, in the Python ecosystem who can help us deal with such stuff, that we don't have to write too much regex, because yeah, regex, it has the tendency to be not extremely readable. So if you write an regex, it's okay. If 1 year later you have to read it, it's sometimes easier to write a new one. And then, yeah, the goal is to be able to parse the structure, and that we know how to use TextFSM, TTP, or Genie. So, yeah. There is, of course, also more libraries. We would have, for example, pipe parsing as a library if we would write our own parsing language, kind of. Could be fun. I have never done it, luckily, but we could write our own parser if we need something special. And probably the most used way to deal with this kind of output would be regex. And if we look closely, TextFSM and TTP, they are more or less an abstraction of regex, so that we don't have to write regex syntax, but in the background they will generate regex for us. And Genie itself, it's a SDK. We can use the function, the libraries, and if we look at the code, there is a lot of regex. So yeah, it ends up to be a lot of regex when we are talking about screenscaping. And this can be more tough, especially if we have, for example, information on multiple lines or in tables and all this stuff, right? So also one fun issue is always, if the device name is longer than usual, then maybe it's not on one line, it's on 2 lines. That's also something we would need to be able to handle. And the idea with TextFSM TTP is to have something that can help us a little, and the general idea is to be not the only one who is suffering, but share our suffering with the community, contribute in templates, for example, so that we can all test and get something as stable as possible. Yeah. So TextFSM itself, it's developed by Google a long time ago. It was also used for Linux commands a lot, table Linux commands to get information out. And what we basically have, we have a template where we defined how this data should look. We can define some variables, and what we get is structured data or list of records. So here it is nice if you're talking with tables and all this stuff. It is definitely on the first was designed for this use case. So this could be now, well, let's call it the HelloWorld script, and this would be the TextFSM template. So what we here want to parse is a simple one line with time dates, for example, and we can now say we have different values. We have year, and here we have regex, so there are one or multiple digits. We have month day, the same. We have month, there are multiple character or words. We have time zone, regex again. We have the time, who is in this format, and we now can say a record. In the beginning it starts, let's regex again, then we kind of say here is the time. We have 2 digits, colon 2 digits, colon 2 digits. Here we even have then this 0, but yeah, we just say everything else is ignored, we don't need that. We have time zone, so central time. We have the month here, and yeah, so on. So this could be one record. Here we say this is one record, and if we have a log file, for example, we could parse the log file, and we get all the time, the strings in a structured way. So if we want to see what would the output look, would be something like this. And if we would have multiple, we just will have in this list multiple mappings with this data. Kind of nice, right? We don't have to write one huge regex command. We can have simple parts with values, we can reuse them. And what we also can do here is, this is one record, but if we have multiple time formats, we can do multiple of these record lines. So say this can match, or this can match, this can match. So we don't have to make one huge overcomplicated regex. We can abstract and have some nice structure in our template. It's called template, yeah. Now there is, as I said, we are not the only one who are suffering, so why not suffering together? So there is this project, NetworkToCode. It's kind of a collection of templates. Someone wrote a template, and we can now see if we need something. We can see, is there a template? If there is a template, we most likely will use it, right? And otherwise, if we are nice, and hopefully we are nice, we try to come make a pull request and add it to it. Yeah. So if I want to have data from a device, first I would see, do I have a way to get it in structured data? We will see then in the coming lessons when we talk about Yang, NetConf, ResConf, gRPC, that modern devices, they have finally APIs who are for machine communication. Many devices, if you do a show command, you can afterwards, for example, pipe format and then say I want to have JSON or XML. So that's also already good. But many times we have to deal with old devices or with devices who are not so nice to us, and then we need screenscaping. And yeah, then this is definitely a nice collection here. We go just to see what is around. We have templates, and there is one or two, right? So in the lab, what you had was Cisco iOS, for example, iOS or iOS XE, and we see there is a lot of templates already here. Or then for Cisco Nexus also for Juniper, for Arista, a lot of stuff, but still many times there is maybe not exactly what you need. Then you have to build your own and spend some time. But all of this here, likely they are kind of stable because many people using them, and if something would be in a weird state or there are some stuff like, I think I should start to make a collection with all the stuff why I hate screenscaping. But if I remember correctly, there was one Cisco Nexus platform who on one time decided randomly for some, I'm not sure if it was ARP entrance, to switch from seconds to seconds dot milliseconds. But there was no pattern why and when this happened, but just sometimes they had a dot and some numbers more. If you know it, of course you can fix it, but if it happens out of the blue and you have never seen it before, you need to fix it. You have a bug fix, it's annoying. Hopefully you have designed your solution that this can definitely happen, that something just crashes, and that you have the proper error handling and all the stuff. So yeah, error handling, network automation is sadly one of the important things. We did some MPLS layer 3 VPN BGP stuff, so if we would, for example, want to see if the BGP peering is up, there must be now iOS show BGP, no, show, and then let's say BGP. Maybe it's under IP BGP, depending which. Yeah, so we have, for example, the summary, and yeah, here this would now give us structured data. I recommend you, if you're working with this library, this is nice to see here. There's also an index XML or YAML file, there's an index file because what this library also does, it matches a show command directly to the right template. There's this file, so if you, for example, we see later using NetMiko, you can say, I have installed this Python package with all the templates. I want to do a show IP BGP summary, and please use TextFSM. It will look up if it has the right template magically. So yeah, for that is this index file over here. But if you are looking at templates, all the stuff, what I would recommend is going to the tests, because one of the most important thing here is testing, sadly. And if we, for example, now would look show IP BGP summary we had before, we can see here that there is a raw file, and this output here would generate this structured data. That does not mean that this template, for example, will cover all the stuff is in the show command. It just means that someone who wrote this, or a couple people who contributed, they were thinking, I need this and this information, but there is a chance that, for example, this number received path is not in the data itself. Then we would need to make a pull request to change the the template. So just because there is a template does not mean that this person who wrote this template needed the same information as you are needing. So maybe you have to also adapt, change some stuff. But the good news is there is a lot of templates here. And why develop something by yourself where you have to hit all the weird cases by yourself if there was already a community who did the work? And if you are benefiting from the community, please also contribute. Yeah, so this is TextFSM, easy to use, especially because we have pip install and TC templates. We will get the templates. We can just use it with the index file. So think that's a nice approach. It's probably also from these three tools you see the oldest one. TTP is quite new. Well, not so new anymore, but much newer than TextFSM. The idea was like writing this TextFSM can be sometimes annoying, and for generating a text we have templates, right? Changer, for example, we have used probably Changer a lot in the past. So why would it not be nice to have the same thing for the other direction? Kind of writing Changer to get from a text the variables who were needed to generate this text. It is not exactly the same like Changer, but the idea behind is the same. So if you would look here, this is more or less Changer syntax with filters. Just of course now we have different filters, like we can say day is a digit, year is a digit, and now this will then be a regex in the end. So what this library does, it takes this file or this template here and generates a regex out of it. There is a lot of features there with grouping, so we can also have better structure and all the stuff. This library could of course also be used for normal text. So if we have show IPVRF, show run VRF command, we could use a template to get all the structured data we need to configure this, if we would need the opposite direction. In an ideal world, we have a declarative definition with all our parameters, and we don't need to care about the configuration, because at any time we could generate it. Sadly, many times we are not living in an ideal world. So here we say we want to have parse, we want to have JSON output, and this is what we would get. So this is perfectly easy for an exam question for me. You don't have to program, but yeah, some simple transformation of data from JSON to YAML will be on the exam. There will be probably some templating, there will be some parsing. Yeah, so will be not really extreme complicated cases. You have at least 2 versions of all exams you can check. But yeah, this is kind of stuff it's easy for me to test. Here, one thing that we see at the moment is this is a digit, but it is represented as a string at the moment. So we could also need some more syntax to tell TTP to convert it to an integer. Because now if we would put this, for example, in the data validation, if we would use JSON schema on top of this to validate it, it will fail and say, I expect a number, you give me a string, I don't like you. Right. So this is some details we have to see. There are also 2 repositories with the same idea to collect some templates. They are not as big as the other ones, definitely by far, but it also, if you create a TTP template, normally it is kind of handy to have a place to go and see how this could work. So here, for example, for platforms, we have Cisco. IP-ARP is definitely easy. So this is documentation. And okay, I said it is easy, but it will maybe. This is the template itself. It says, hey, we have groups, so we have multiple lines in the end, and each line could be a hit for this or for this one. It's quite small, sorry. For me, it's much bigger. Huh? And we can also say then a MAC address is a MAC address, and because the library itself has this filter, it knows what kind of regex it needs to use, because MAC address is another nightmare because we have so many different forms. We can have 4 digits, or for characters and colon, double colon, all the weird stuff I have seen so far. So it's handy to have just a kind of generic filter. We can do some stuff like if we have a minus in the ARP table, if we look and we have static entries, for example, normally, for example, Cisco has a minus or a dash sign there. But if we want to convert this to an integer to work with it, like we will do here, to int, the age column needs to be converted to int. This will fail because a minus or a dash we cannot convert to an integer. Yeah, so there is a lot of advanced features as well here, but it's kind of simple because it's really similar to templating language like Jinja. If I have something I need to screenscape and there is no template in any of the tools and there is no interface I can use, I at the moment will probably use TTP just because it's simple. I like how it works. It does not have huge dependencies, and yeah, I can test it, I can work with it. So I'm quite happy with this library. But of course, I try to avoid screenscaping as much as possible. So every time there is some screenscaping, I look which coworker could the job for me. Yeah. So then we will have this Genie. I also need to mention this because Cisco has this tool or this framework, PyATS. So it's kind of internally developed Python tool for Cisco. They used it mainly for testing new releases. So for example, what this framework could do is you can upgrade a device and make tests before and after if it still does BGP the same, if it still does all the stuff. And what they built internally was a lot of parsing. They have their own schema models, they have a good support for Cisco devices, they have some other vendor devices again also there. But one of the drawbacks for me is we cannot just take the parser part, we have to kind of install the whole framework. It's a much bigger dependency than the other two solutions. If we anyway using PyATS, or if we need a lot of parsing, it's maybe a good considering to use this stuff here. In the background there is a lot of regex. In the past I had some issues that some commands did not really get parsed in the way I needed it. Creating a pull request is a tough one here. It's much easier to work with the TextFSM template community or with TTP, but it's not impossible as well. So if we hit the bug, we can also try to fix it. The code, it looks simple. In PyATS we normally have a test bed similar to an inventory file in Narnia or in Ansible. We have a device there, we can say please go to this command, this device, execute the show command and return to me structured data. So this is the official way to work with Genie. There are also some ways that we can outpass the device connection part, but it will always come, the code is in the dependencies. But if we have, for example, a nice tooling with NetMiko, NetMiko has a way to use Genie parser without using the PyATS device connection part. Yeah, so what we will get here is, for example, data structure. One nice thing similar to Napalm, we will get the same structure on different platforms. So if we go to the documentation, let's say here we have the Genie part. we have also here the hello world, and what is interesting for us would be then the available parsers they have, because we today talking about screenscaping, we want to parse some stuff. So if we go here, we see already kind of a long list for different devices. So all this XA is iOS XA. So for all these show commands, there are parsers. That's just XA at the moment, right? So I was looking a little, if you open anyone here, you see what kind of show commands are supported, the schema of the data returned, and you can also go to the source code. I did that over here just as an example for something simple as show CDP neighbors. Even here, this is for iOS XA, so there is a lot of regex going on, because the output could look like this, right? So we have regex, but of course if the device name, for example here, is longer, then this will be on the next line, new line, so we have to deal with that as well. We can have completely different platforms, we have different parameters. So yeah, someone here, in this case Cisco mainly, did a lot of work with regex to get all of this information. So yeah, sometimes it makes sense to use existing libraries, and not that everyone does the same stuff by themselves again, right? Because we want to do the fun part, we want to automate, we don't want to deal with regex as much as possible. Of course, if we're talking about regex, one page I hope you know already should be this regex 101, I believe. Let's go here. Regex 101, must it be? I cannot even. I was here. So this would be, in my case, normally one of the pages I use to build my regex, to check my regex, if I really have to do regex. But I don't really remember when the last time was I needed to make some complicated regex stuff. But maybe I'm also drinking too much alcohol, I don't remember. But yeah, regex is a tool we need to handle. We should avoid too complicated stuff by doing by ourselves, but yeah, definitely if you're debugging, I remember now, we had the issue that napalm did not work for our lab environment, and I had to do some debugging, and in the end I realized that the regex used in napalm for IPv6 did not cover the use case that we can have double colon and nothing for the first IP in a subnet. And then if this was the neighbor in the BGP peering, it did not appear. So after a fun session of troubleshooting in Python code, couple of, let's call it coffee, and yeah, some hairless, then there was a pull request, and now it's fixed until the next bug comes. But yeah, if we have screenscaping, you have to be aware that this can be one of the parts. So what I was mentioning was NetMiko, because we were already using NetMiko, probably in the non part, or maybe you were using Napalm, that's also fine. But if we are talking about NetMiko, there is the option that we can, in the send command, just define use TextFSM. If we specify this, automatically we'll try to pass the output into structured data. Same with use TTP. If we use TTP, we need to specify a TTP template. There is no, as far as I know, there is no magic implemented in NetMiko or in the TTP function used to automatically look for a template, even if there is a repository who has kind of these features as well. And there is the option use Genie. They all are of course, how can I say, you need to have the libraries installed. So we can also go here and check TTP. Yeah, this must be then. Yeah, this TextFSM. So in this example, we have the command. The command is show IP int brief. We say use TextFSM because we have the template installed. We get not the text, we directly get structured data, and then we can iterate over all interfaces and see if they are up or down, and much nicer than dealing with the text, right? The same would go for TTP. We have here a really simple interface template who would look at the running config, I assume now, interface and then description. So we will end up with interface descriptions. We use here the template file. Let's say we want to use TTP. The command must be then a show run, maybe even with a section. Yeah, here show run include section interfaces, and the output, in this case we have only 2 interfaces, or the output was trimmed to only these ones. Yeah, the same for Genie. Here of course there is no much magic in the code itself, because the matching now happening in Genie. We say use Genie, and it will take the show IP interface brief command and see if it has an implementation for this platform for this command, and return the structured data like we see here. Yeah, so this is all the stuff. If you're working with TextFSM and TTP, you remember hopefully this web page, Ginger 101 infrastructure as code.ch, where we could have examples, for example, rendering interface configs, right? Hope you remember. And this awesome guy who did this, he did also, when you go to tools, the same thing for TTP and for TextFSM. So if we want to test or try out these templates, you can go here, for example, the ARP for TTP, or maybe if you are then doing it on the computer, it's maybe easier than sometimes if you doing it in the lab to make it smaller. This guy who did the whole stuff is not really a UI specialist. There are other modules for that. But we have here the raw data, we have here the template, and if you would render, hopefully it works. We get here, for example, the stuff. And also here the age we saw is an integer, so there is this to int age with the replace, as we saw in the slide. So that works as well. And here the TextFSM, the same game. For example, the time example we saw, we have multiple time entries. We have one really simple template with a record, and we generate this here. Also here, remember, everything is a string. So depending in which kind of mood I will be on the exam, this could be a question if it's an integer or not. Because I believe this kind of stuff kind of matter if we deal with structured data, that we also know what kind of type it is. Python itself, untyped or dynamic typed language, but to be honest, if we want to work with data, with input, and we want to have a stable tooling, or yeah, we want to have error handling, all the stuff, we need to do a lot of input and output validation stuff. So data types are important. Any questions so far? Okay, so yeah, this would be the presentation, but If we are talking about data structure and all the stuff, one thing I wanted to show you just in the Python world, that's done. If we go to Pantic, this is a Python library who really helps us to deal with data structure in my opinion. Of course, if we are programming, we can make our own objects, we can make our data classes in Python. We have a lot of nice tools. I personally like this library where I can generate my data structure in classes, so I can work with them in an object-oriented way, but it also brings me already some validation stuff. So if you have never heard about this and you want to do stable network automation, I highly recommend to check this out as well. So yeah, it's a data validation library for Python. It directly supports the most common IDEs. So normally if we would do this Python, if you do it natively, the classical way, we have our object, we have our int function to create the object and all the stuff. This would be here done directly. Of course, we in Python have the data class stuff, or we have some other inside tools, but here we can really use also advantage of the data types typing, who is for example, here we can say this dimension is a tuple and it has to have 2 integers. If we would now take a JSON and give it to the base model, it would populate all the stuff and it would fail and say you did not give me 2 integers. And yeah, so why do everything, all the validation by ourselves, if we can have something like this? One of the handy things in my opinion is also that we can generate the JSON schema and generate use it for validation of our data in a pipeline, but also in the IDE, or we can define our API with it, like OpenAPI does. And there is a code generation tool who can take JSON schema and generate the Pantic file. So we also have a lot of tooling to generate the classes by ourselves. When we get structured data from our network device, many times it is not exactly in this way we want to have it, because we need it in our special form. And one feature I discovered this year, probably, maybe it was last year, how you will see, because I did a blog post about it, so let's see when I discovered it. This year, 11th January. So for example, this is something we could get with RESTconf when we're using this interface. Kind of complicated data structure. If we just want to have something simple, what Pantic has is this alias path, so we can transform with these 2 models all the interfaces in a list with only the data. So remember, we have this data structure, and what we end up, for example, is this data structure, but with Python objects. For example, the IPv4 is an IPv4 interface object, and now I could say, what is your network mask, or what is your broadcast address, in a Pantic way, so it also automatically casts in the right object types, because I defined the object type here. So also some before validation stuff. It is really powerful if you want to do more in Python and you want to do nice stuff. I recommend that you check out this Pantic library. I don't have any shares, sadly. It's open source. But there's a company who building new products around. I also don't have any shares there. Questions? Okay, thank you very much.